Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. I'm Steve David and I'm your host. Today I want to talk about the TTFA happenings. There's so much, or so little, I should say, that's going on that we want to see if we can help you, the viewers, identify or come up, or not identify, but believe in what's going on in TTFA. We kicked out the Wallace group. The normalization committee is supposed to take over, and now it's like it's dragging. We don't know what's going on, so we will give you the little that we know. I have two panel members with me. One is running late, so we're going to start anyway. But I have Linda Bramble. Welcome to set, Linda.
Good evening. Good morning, Steve. It's good to be here again.
Glad to have you. And Jefferson George. Welcome to set, Jefferson.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here as always.
Glad to have you. And we have to say hi in the sky to Larry Joseph. And we lost Larry, buried Larry last week, and we had to move forward without him, but we're going to miss him.
That's right.
Again, to the family of Larry, condolences. We are so sorry for your loss. Okay. When this group, or with the Pro League and all these people put in all documents to say, let's sign petition to get Wallace Group out. I was disappointed in how aggressive we moved, and then now it's like nobody's moving aggressive. The normalization committee is doing nothing, and I don't see anybody doing anything. Like, nobody cares. They just wanted to get that Wallace Group out. But anyhow, that was just my personal feeling, not the panel. But to you panel members, we have something out there called the unsigned letter. Do you guys heard about that?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Let me hear what you hear and see if I could make sense out of that unsigned letter. And whoever it's coming from, we don't know. But again, you guys might have some insight that I don't. So who's going to start? You, Linda?
Okay, I can kick things off.
All right.
And from what I've been hearing is that all the slow pace concerning what the normalization committee is supposed to be doing falls squarely on the blame of the office staff that they have inherited, so forth. But for me, I believe that the normalization committee, if the staff, you can't blame the staff for things that you should be putting in place. Okay? As I said before on previous shows, we have the normalization committee should have had all structures in place. If structures were in place, then there would not have been any finger pointing. Things would have been already in place so that when we get the opportunity to start up, like for instance with the game that the team had in the US, right? Once we had those proper structures in place, then things would have been
business as usual.
Of course. And this is the problem. The problem is the fact that we do not have those structures in place, because from as far as what I get to understand is that, like, all those committees and so forth that were set up by the previous administration is null and void. I don't know if that is true or so. So maybe someone can give us the insight as to, are these committees, because on one hand you're hearing that those committees are null and void, and the next hand you're hearing that those committees should have been doing their work. So maybe the persons on those committees are confused because they do not know whether or not, yes, the committee is up and running, or is Mr. Haddad supposed to appoint other persons or call the committee and, talk to them and let them know you all are still in charge and so forth?
I don't think the committees exist.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Jefferson, you know more than Linda and I. Give us a take.
Well, what I do know is that things aren't going in the direction that any of us would be pleased with. All right. One of the very concerning things to me is that at this point, almost a year into being normalized, the question can be asked, normalize what, right? Or what would normalization look like? It is very concerning when you have persons who are now in leadership ascribing blame to persons, lower down the food chain. For me, that is very concerning, because one of the things with our football, and not just football, it's something that happens in the football being a microcosm of our society, is those who are charged with leadership often take the opportunity to cast blame at others when things don't go as they're supposed to. And I think that doesn't speak well to where our football would be going. Right? This opportunity, seeing that we are already here, some of us, who, whether you agree with the normalization or disagree with it, I thought that it's an opportunity to rebuild better, to change some of the things that were lacking in our football, one of them being accountability by elected officials. And here we're seeing in this opportunity here, one game being played by our senior team, and all the heads pointing the fingers at others. That is disappointing. To get to the letter now, this seems to be again used to cast blame at others and to absolve some from blame, which was clear in the letter, right? Those who were saying that these persons at the head are not to be blamed for the situation that we are currently in. I cannot accept that. And again, not having insight into every detail and choosing the information that we see is in public and looking at what transpired, I think those are reasonable conclusions to make, that the persons whose job it is, the persons whose hands Trinidad and Tobago football now in, want to say that we didn't drop it, right? It wasn't our fault that we're looking like this. From the head coach come right down, right? Because it started with the coach saying, not me, it's players, and I mean, for somebody who is a leader, from somebody who's a coach, to say, well, I did this, and the players didn't. To me, I think that shows a lack of leadership and so on. If we had to go in a little deeper into the letter, you would realize that the aspersions made was that the office staff were responsible for a number of shortcomings that were pointed out in the letter, right? I mean, as we go through the discussion, we'd probably let us know a little bit more about some of those claims made.
Whoever wrote the letter, that mystery person, I sure we might have feelings on people who we think might have wrote that letter, but whoever wrote it is covering up for somebody, isn't it? Doesn't sound like
clear. It's clear who the person is covering up for, because they clearly said that it's not Mr. Haddad's fault. Now, again, one of the things that we go back to, the principles of leadership and management, you must have a certain amount of knowledge about what you're into, what you're managing. All right. If I'm a football manager, now again, I may not know every detail about it, but I must know enough to know when something is not going as it should. And if you're saying that it's somebody else's fault, at what point was that recognized, and what was done to address it? Now, in the letter, it points out at certain time, you know, they recognize it, and then they intervene to help the situation by drafting the letter. But again, if you are in charge of the persons who are under your care, under your charge, then they don't work by themselves. They work with information, right, from the leadership.
And that is what I was trying to say, in the sense that the persons who are in charge, right, Mr. Haddad, who is supposed to be the head of the committee, then you have the general secretary. Of course, did they meet with office staff? Did they have their plans in place to say, okay, this is what we have in place, and this is what we, and you know, delegate duties. This is what I want you to do. This is what you are responsible for, and so forth. And that is what good leadership is all about. You are the person who are in charge, and you let the persons who work under you know exactly what it is you expect of them, so that they would have clear guidelines and they would know what it is they are supposed to do.
You know, I didn't think they had office staff. I mean, I don't go to Boland Stadium, and I don't know if TFA have even a door open during the day. But who is the office staff? They
do have office staff, and the office staff have been in place for some time. But for me, the concern is not so much is there office staff or not. There is office staff. Again, who do they get their directives from? Office staff don't just go in there and start to do things, right? I can't just go. I am an employee if I'm on office staff, right? I don't just go in there and start to call USA. No, that is not how it runs. Exactly. And the trying to portray that is how an office is run, I think is trying to mislead people, right, to cover for persons who did not do what they were supposed to do.
To cover for Haddad and Fenwick and those people? You guys don't want to call the names?
Well, if you read the letter.
The thing about it is, the person who wrote the letter is trying to cover for the persons who are in charge, who were supposed to ensure that things are in place, let's say, for example, for the USA game, for the World Cup campaign that is supposed to start shortly, okay? For players, to ensure that players start training, all right? And you cannot blame the persons that are under you if you have not given them a directive. And as you said, I was surprised. I did not, as I said, I did not know that all those committees are still in place, because let's take, for example, the LOC. They said that the LOC did not do what they were supposed to do. Did the LOC know that they were still, that committee is still operating and that they were supposed to do the X, Y, and Z? Did Mr. Haddad have a meeting, or the General Secretary had a meeting with the LOC to let them know that we are in campaign mode for our World Cup campaign, and this is what needs to be in place? Did they consult the persons with the expertise in those areas? Was that done? And we don't know if that was done. And to me, I honestly speaking, I don't think that was done.
For me and my viewers, what is the LOC?
The LOC is the local organizing committee, all right? And for
how did they
thing with TTFA?
To be quite honest with you, yeah, the TTFA, and it's a committee, a local organization committee that is, I guess, formed by the TTFA. So obviously, what the committee that they are talking about had to be a committee that was put in place by the former administration.
Meaning John Williams?
Well, I don't know if it's John Williams
or it can't be Wallace and Day.
William Wallace or whoever.
Oh, is it?
I don't, it could have been.
That's one of the committees.
One of the committees that will see about all local games and so
right, all the organizations surrounding those games, hotels for teams coming, right, and the logistics surrounding local activity, right, even like training schedule and stuff for teams who are going to.
Well,
I know.
Is there like such I thought everything that the Wallace administration did is normalized. is out of the way.
That was my opinion also. So now I'm reading this letter and I'm hearing that the LOC did not do what they are supposed to do. And I am saying, who set up this LOC that they are talking about? Who set up this LOC? Was it done by the Normalization Committee, or is it a committee that was set up by the previous administration? So if it was something set up by the previous administration, then obviously the LOC is of the view that they null and void.
It's on Jefferson, no. Let's hear.
No, well, the thing about it is with this, for me, who set up the LOC, for me, is irrelevant. There's a committee, nomination committee, who is in charge of football now, and there's an LOC now, based on the information that we have, right? Who gives them the mandates is the leadership, right? Exactly. So who set it up, when it was set up? The issue here is the shortcoming because of certain things that were supposed to be done that were not done, all right? And I'm saying in any organization, the buck stops at the head. If there were shortcomings below that, that would have been identified because of whatever system that you have operating. Not at the end when things don't work out, then the leadership is coming and say, well, this didn't happen, right? If there were proper systems in place, you would have found where they were falling short, who was not coming up to scratch, right? Who wasn't meeting the deadlines set out by you. And that would have been dealt with along that time, right? Not when things are already messed up. To come back and then cast blame, retrospectively, I think that's poor leadership.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a phone call in the break. Get a hold of Clarky, make sure he's here, because he would know. I know Clarky would know. I mean, I was the guy coach. When I say coach, life coach. So he would know, and he would give us all the information that we need to bridge a little that we know with what's going on, because we are confused. So let's take a break. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
What is taking place in that letter? I think that is the point that they're trying to make, that the staff, because maybe they're upset with the fact that the organization, the management of the organization, they were removed and someone else was placed in, that, they're not working as they should with the leadership. Right.
Welcome back, viewers. Before the break, we was discussing the unsigned letter, and now we're back, and we have Anthony Clark with us. Welcome to set, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's always a pleasure.
And I know you were a little bit late, but things happen. Shit happens. And now, I heard Linda and Jefferson version on this unsigned letter, and I want to know how much you know, because it's like the blind leading the blind with this unsigned letter. Like, nobody knows who's running what and whether we have a staff, and they come up with some LOC, acronym LOC, meaning Linda had to explain that to us and everything else. So give us a little breakdown on what you know about this unsigned letter.
Well, Steve, I've been in management for years. Mm-hmm. And although I know that people will want to blame Mr. Haddad and the Normalization Committee, that is not his job. It is the job of the team management to ensure that the things that they want are in order. They have to follow up to make sure that the things that they have requested are in order. I assume that if it comes down to financial stuff, it will eventually reach Mr. Haddad's attention. But people have to recognize, just like the Prime Minister of the country and ministers of government, a minister does not run the ministry. Mr. Haddad is not operating, dealing with every step of the things will eventually reach to him when it requires his sign-off. Some things don't even need his approval, and therefore it remains with the management and the general secretaries, at the general secretary's level. The general secretary is like the permanent secretary in a ministry. He handles the operations of what has to go on there. And I will carry the blame down a little further, because the team management, not the coach, right, Mr. Fenwick, have nothing to do with this, because his job is not dealing with these things either, right? The team management has to liaise with the office staff of the TTFA and make sure that all the dots are in a row. All the dots, the ducks, whatever they say, are in a row. And if they have any issues, then it either goes to the head coach or goes up over the general secretary's head to Mr. Haddad.
But they're talking about office staff. And to me, TFA has no office staff.
No, TTFA has their own office staff.
And who selected that group of people who's working with them?
That I don't know, but who is in charge of them is the general secretary.
Right.
So I don't know who hired them, but ultimately who they report to is the general secretary of the TTFA.
Oh, okay, so if they do have an office staff, that is very recent, because the general secretary, he was on since the normalization committee came in, or he came in after?
So TTFA would have had a staff of maybe 6 to 8 people, even when the previous administration were there. They inherited the office staff. Normally you're going to a new company, you don't change the admin assistant and the...
Okay.
So TTFA always had an office staff, right? And those people have been there for years. So they know what happens in football. They have been on many local organization committees and so on and so forth.
But they just do what they're told, because they was like, write me a letter, send me this, send me that. That's what the office staff does.
Now, you have to understand that people have roles and functions, and they must understand their roles and functions as well, right? So if it is something now that reaches that they are not familiar with, they take it to the next level, whoever their supervisor is. So eventually, if things are not in place, it could eventually reach the general secretary, who's supposed to be able to deal with anything.
And as you're speaking about general secretary, remember they had Mr. Ramdan there, and I think that Mr. Ramdan is someone who came with a wealth of experience and knowledge, especially with the football thing. And then he was
kicked out.
Removed.
For me, I differ to you in that.
And
I don't know what management experience Mr. Ramdan had. Mr. Ramdan had refereeing experience. Management of an organization is something totally different to refereeing on a football field.
All right, let's not beat up.
Exactly. But do you think the new general secretary has that management? Because
I don't know, and I don't want to take the conversation to the ability to do the job. I'm just saying the job of the general secretary is to manage the office staff. So if the office staff, of course, the manager of the team, of the football team, will eventually take it to either the general secretary, who then will give instructions, or if he knows a point person in the office to deal with this, he will take it to that person. And if that person is normally dealing with it, but however they can now not deal with it or they can't solve it, it will eventually reach whoever the general secretary is. And the general secretary is supposed to deal with that, because the general secretary is actually the expert. It's not the president.
It's supposed to be.
The general secretary is supposed to be the expert on administrative issues of football anywhere in the world.
Okay, let me manage this group here now. So, the World Cup game that I'm reading on this little unsigned letter that is not organized, who's supposed to take care of that?
Ultimately, the General Secretary.
So that's his job.
Yes.
And so do we or do we not have a World Cup game that's going to happen here? You guys, for any one of you guys.
Do we have a game that is happening here?
That has to happen.
Well, we have an upcoming game that we will be participating in.
But we're not sure.
The game is not going to be playing here. Right, as of now,
Yeah.
the game is not going to be playing in Trinidad and Tobago. Right, Clarky mentioned some interesting things and laid out an idea as to the functioning,
The flow.
yes, of our office, right? And that's important to understand because, again, in our football, at any point, administration has never been our strong suit, never. It has never been the part of our football that has been lacking the most has been administratively, all right? That is something that we all look forward to see being addressed and moving on to another level, right, which will benefit football in general. Now, having said so, we are in a period of normalization, and that is one of the things that hopefully
Which
I thought we would benefit from. Now, the office, again, like you mentioned, that I can confirm that the staff members and the office staff, they have been there for a very long time. They've been there through multiple administrations, right? And, well, I don't know on a daily basis to rate them in terms of competence, but they should have a level of competence and experience to function, right? But again, back to the point that I made before, office staff, they are employees. They carry out the mandate of the leadership whose head is the General Secretary, right? As Clarky said. Now, having a new executive in place,
the new head.
right? And let's not say executive, because that executive is the whole thing. You have a new leader. We, at this point, right, based on the contents of the letter, we do not know to what extent that leadership has impacted on the office staff. We know that they know how to function. We know what they have been doing, what they do for the longest while. And that is, for me, what is not clear. How has the leadership impacted on that office staff?
It sounds like me the tail is wagging the dog, no, Clarky?
And
Olinda?
in any organization, okay, if it is that the persons, it's your ground employees that are really driving the force behind the organization, and if it is that there is that relationship that it's not a good one between the staff and the persons who are in charge, right? You would find that you will not get things done the way that it is supposed to be done. And from what is taking place in that letter, I think that is the point that they're trying to make, that the staff, because maybe they're upset with the fact that the organization, the management of the organization, they were removed and someone else was placed in, that, you know, they're not working as they should with the leadership.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
I think that's one of the things, because if you, from the wording, again, using the term sabotage, I think is a very strong term. And again, I don't want to refer too much to that it was unsigned. So again, we cannot give too much credibility in the letter. We're just dealing basically with what we know happened, right? And how it looked to us. And again, if you go back to the word, you know, sabotage, I think that is demoralizing for people who you would have to work with in the future to accomplish things going forward.
I mean, to add to what both Ryland and Jeff has said, at the end of the day, the office staff, they have a job to do, no matter who the leadership is. For example, the public servants, no matter who the government is, they have to continue running the public service. So to say that the office staff may be demoralized because the leadership has changed, that means whoever, if it fell down with somebody there, they should be disciplined or fired or whatever, because you have a job to do no matter who the leadership is. All right, but I still want to emphasize, because for the past, when Jeff speaks about the management of football, the administration of football, it goes as far down as team managers. Because a team manager thinks that all he is supposed to do is make sure water there, make sure balls there with the equipment manager. There are administrative things that he has to do, which is in conjunction with the TTFA, that he has to make sure happens. And if he realizes by a certain day or time that something is not happening, it is his duty, because it will ultimately affect him and the team. He must go into the TTFA and ask questions and remind them, because, right, somebody may have forget. It could be on somebody's tray on their desk and it has not even reached the leadership, right, at the General Secretary. But he's supposed to be following up on the things that affect the team. So when Jeff speaks about that, it starts from that level as well.
And I think one of the major problems is communication.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that lack of communication from who is supposed to do this and where it's supposed to go, I think that is one of the major problems that resulted in.
Clarky mentioned team managers at a national team level, regardless of which age group you are. That is a critical function. People on the outside of football don't know how much work team managers have to do, right? And for this case, in the letter that the national team manager was mentioned, again, he is, I don't know him as a manager, I know him as a young coach, and to put somebody without the requisite experience into a senior team management position, that may be one of the areas where we were obviously short. And like he mentioned it, and again, persons on the outside, there are specific things that you have to do in terms of registration, even for a friendly, right? Getting passports and making sure that numbers line up with coming forward to these World Cup games. We have a World Cup game this month. Managers working today on that, because those things are very, very critical. And that person can be the one that stands between a player being able to take the field because he's improperly registered,
Correct.
And not, right? So that's a very, very, very serious job, and it takes quite a lot of work to do.
And coming off of what you just said, right, we see again where we have people, job for my friend.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Because I was now going to add, Linda, is that until we get to the point that the General Secretary has a degree in sports management and not, right, somebody friend or a senior person or a senior referee, and managers of teams must have some sort of degree in management, and not because they come through football and they was a coach and right, he now retired, so we'll put him as a manager. We have to make sure that we place people based on their academic qualifications and experience.
Yeah.
So just like our coach has to have A license, B license, a referee has to have their licenses, we must also ensure that managers and management of areas have the proper qualifications as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, well, you know, I feel like there is no head, there is nobody sending information down to take care of things to handle. Everybody is like, who's handling it? Because there's things like the World Cup game that is not scheduled. Is that what I read? That
No, it is scheduled.
It is scheduled. It is scheduled. We just
but we don't know if
playing
it's
it.
Right, it's not going to be home.
It's not going to be how it's going to be.
Yeah, but also because of
Government regulations.
the government regulations for COVID as well. It's not really a
Right.
TTFA issue.
Solely, yeah.
Yeah, solely a TTFA issue.
So, I mean, but it's the road is very rough, though.
It is.
With everything that's going on.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, one of the things that I really think is the main issue, and not knocking Mr. Haddad, but I don't think that, well, maybe he doesn't know exactly what is needed of him.
Of course he knows. And the operational aspect of football is not Mr. Haddad's job. That operational aspect of these things that we're dealing with, it's the General Secretary's job.
Well, maybe somebody don't know exactly what their role and function is, but that, because I think if the person who is in charge know their role and function, then they would be able to disseminate that information to the persons who are supposed to be
I don't think it's from top down. I think it might be from bottom up, coming from the team manager, because he's the one that needs to know what needs to be put in place. So it needs to
whosoever they do not know what their role and responsibilities are, and that therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Our General Secretary, he has his degree and everything else, but does he ever hold a position like that before? So maybe not, and maybe that's where he lacks some experience. So somebody needs to whip him in place. And I'm sure they should have somebody above him who can help him and lead him in some kind of way. Let's take a break. When we come back, Jefferson, I'll get to you. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
It will be preferred if it's somebody with management who understands football as well, and so on and so forth. But in this normalization stage, where it is that TTFA is said to be $50 million in the red, that is what Mr. Haddad is trying to deal with.
Viewers. So you were going to say something, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on a point that Clarky made in terms of staffing, because again, I think we have to capitalize on an opportunity that we have to build our football structures better, right? And I think this is, if we miss this opportunity here, it's going to be very disappointing, right? You have, like you mentioned about the team managers, right? And I think we could spare time on this because it's an important function and a bridge between your field and the office staff, right? And he carries both roles, right? So he takes weight off of the office staff who are not directly into the operation of the football, and he also carries, that authority from the office towards the coaching staff and that type of thing, right? And if the right persons aren't in those positions, the structure is not going to be sung at all, right? And I think at this point in time, while we are on the normalization, I don't like seeing persons who are not properly equipped, don't have the necessary experience, right, or accreditation to full roles being used in those functions. I think that is a disservice to the football, right? And if we are going down that road, we are obviously failing to fix our administrative side of football.
Okay, so to the panel, who provide these people in these positions? For example, the manager of the team, who is Mr. Romain, I think it is. Who put him in position? Because when the United TTFA was normalized and out, I don't think they brought him in.
No.
So
we have an excellent manager who has been the manager for the last probably 4 years, Richard Piper, who is excellent team manager, administrator, right? And
good relationship with the office.
Very good relationship with the office.
He works with the office.
And with the team, and he is still on staff, However, you have Romain, who has normally been somebody who was around Terry Fenwick, right? And I think it's clear for us that Terry Fenwick brought him on board, right? But my thing is, if he's coming on board, he came on board initially as a coach in that period there when Mr. Fenwick was training, right? When things were sort of up in the air.
Right.
And now he wasn't utilized as a coach, he was utilized as a team manager, right? The point Clark he was making, those are not adjustments that you can make. Somebody who's a coach, just slide him in to be a team manager. Obviously, he's not equipped to do that.
But that shouldn't even happen, though. That's what I'm saying. Oh, no.
But those sort of things happen in Trinidad football all the time. So.
Oh, really?
And this is what we need to fix. As we said, this is what we need to fix. We have to get away from that job for our friends.
Correct.
And bring the proper persons who have the skills, the proper experiences, and the know-how so that they would be able to do their job efficiently. It's the same thing, for example, like presently I am the acting head of the science department at my school at San Fernando Secondary. And obviously, in order for me to be appointed as the head in that role, for the ministry, I have to do my DPED.
Correct.
I have to do a
have to
diploma in
qualify.
education.
Correct.
I have to.
So,
and I had to do it.
Right, I want to take it to a different level to show you the manager of a football team doesn't even have to know anything about football.
No.
Right.
He has to know about management.
Right.
Because his coach will tell him what games, right, they propose to play or who they would like to play. He now goes to TTFA and see if that could be organized. He has no real function on the field except ensuring that you have water and the balls are there and the team uniform, but you also have an equipment manager. So in terms of, right, so taking that and as well moving forward to Mr. Haddad doesn't need to know anything about football or the running of football, right? That's the job of the General Secretary. Mr. Haddad is more for policy, finances, making sure everything that once football could get, dealing with FIFA, dealing with the audits of TTFA to make sure that you could get funding from FIFA. Those are the things that will take the attention of Mr. Haddad, not how to run a league, the right Super League, or not how to run the Pro League, or not to arrange referee for this game or that game. Those are not the things that Mr. Haddad would address. That is for the General Secretary. Now, of course, it will be preferred if it's somebody with management who understands football as well and so on and so forth. But in this normalization stage, where it is that TTFA is said to be $50 million in the red, that is what Mr. Haddad is trying to deal with. He is not really trying to deal with the registration of players and ensuring that is for the General Secretary. I have to deal with this $50 million debt. I have to deal with making sure that the audits are right so that FIFA could send funding still. Those are the things that are taking the attention of Mr. Haddad at this time. We have been spoiled by having a Jack Warner, that our presidents, and a Raymond Timke and a David John Williams, where it seems like if they have to run the football. No, that's the job of the General Secretary. And they should be on policy making, ensuring all these things, just like the Prime Minister of the country does not have to know how to run the finance ministry. He is not an accountant. Or the Prime Minister of the country or the minister does not have to go and fix a pipe for Wassa. Right? That is how the roles and the functions are supposed to be in football. But the president is too prominent in football.
Correct. Good point, Clarky. And again, let's touch on some of the content from the letter to make my point, which is the clear and obvious objective to absolve blame. Now, yes, the president, or in this case, the chairman of the nomination committee, does not need to have that hands-on knowledge. He doesn't need to know about it. But he mentioned policy. And one of the policies here that we definitely need is a strict criteria for selection for different positions.
Correct, yeah.
And that has to be in place, because if downstairs, if we continue to place, you know,
Your friend.
square pegs in wrong holes,
Correct.
we will continue to get
The same
you know,
problems,
square
over and over.
wrong results.
Correct.
Right? And we're seeing effects of that in this situation right here.
Who's have to do that? Make
You know
that
what I'm
happen?
saying, like you mentioned as well, while we are under normalization, these are some of the things
Policies
that
that should be.
put in
Correct.
place.
That's right.
Those are the things that I would like to see happen, that you come out with clear criteria for a head coach. You need this minimum requirement for team managers. All your positions in your football functionally, right, which means on the field, and also administratively, because at the end of the day, yes, we have had people working in the office for a very long time, and now experience is going to be on their side, but holding people accountable for different things, I think that is another situation where we fall down.
Yes.
And ultimately, we need to see people who are in position taking responsibility, so that then you can say to the office staff, this is what you were charged to do, you didn't do it, these are the penalties.
So criteria, you just mentioned criteria, right? So that means who has to set up these things? Is it, there was 3 people that came in the normalization group, right? Is Haddad and with 2 others, if my memory serves me right. There were 2 other people with Haddad.
This has to do with the board of the TTFA. Not just, so the board of the TTFA includes members from the Super League, and I think it's 14 or 15 members include people from the Referees Association, which I find it's too much to have a board. But right. I know Linda wants to get into this.
And this is what this is one of the things that I was talking about. The structures. You need to have those structures in place. And this is where the normalization comes in. And as you say, policy, right? So this is where those persons, as I said, if you don't have a thing, you have those persons who are putting those policies in place.
Who?
And that's the board of the TTFA. It's not Mr. Haddad.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the board is
The
not.
board.
Is the board functioning?
I don't know.
No,
So,
Exactly.
but we are speaking about what is supposed to happen and who makes these policies. The policies, if we remember, we were saying that because we're calling Mr. Haddad's name here now, you have to see Mr. Haddad as David John Williams or
Mr. William
right,
Wallace.
Mr. William Wallace.
Yeah.
And we have complained about them making decisions by themselves and the board, not this. So the board of the TTFA, if they are operating, I do not know. If they are having meetings, I do not know. If they're having AGMs, I do not know. But Mr. Haddad on his own cannot make those policies. He could suggest them to the board,
Okay.
but it will still be up to the board.
But somebody has to generate the enthusiasm in the board. So you guys get together and do X, Y, or Z. They must have a boss.
So the policies
board.
would come from, Mr. Haddad, who's head of the normalization committee, or from the president. He has to present it to the board, and the board will vote on it. It is, what you call, the most votes win, right?
Democratic.
A democratic process of who or what gets the most votes.
Right.
And that is how things go forward. But I don't know if TTFA in the past or right now with Mr. Haddad at present, that is a priority. I know for Mr. Haddad right now as a priority would be dealing with the debt of that. I think all these other things, dealing with the $50 million debt, communicating with FIFA. FIFA at this point in time, you have to understand where we are. At this point in time, FIFA is not concerned if we make a World Cup. And they're not concerned if...
Never been concerned.
Right? That is not FIFA's problem. Right? And I am not concerned about that either. Right? If we make World Cup, if we play a game, that is none of my concern. Because without dealing with the financial aspect of football, no matter how much policies and things you have in place, you have no money to run football, football will still crash.
Without proper structure?
Without
it's
proper,
same thing.
the same thing. All right?
So
at this point in time, while dealing with the money, we have 2 years to put all things in place. The important time for this is when we're going to hand over. Right? Yes, it is time to start putting these things in place. But the real important time for these things to be in place is at the ending of the normalization process, when you're now handing it over, because the normalization committee is not really interested in what ranking Trinidad and Tobago football have right now. They're not interested in if we win as Trinidadians, right? You will think they should be, and oh yes, I will be glad if we win a game or two. But that is not the main function of the normalization committee, to make sure we get proper results.
I disagree, because if the objective is to normalize football, we could all agree that there were things that we needed to do. You tell me that I'm heading to San Fernando, that direction, but I see you heading
other direction.
Other direction. You're going north. Now, at the end of the day, you can try to convince me, yes, that by time to hand over, I'll be in San Fernando. I ain't seen that. You understand what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, we need to, if there's a product to be sold, that product is football. That is what is going to get us. That is what's going to make it credible for investors. And I'm talking FIFA. I think that sometimes the bar is set so low. All right, FIFA good, we know we'll get some money from FIFA, and we could, basically continue doing the foolishness we've been doing. That wouldn't deal with it either. Right? But if there is no product to sell, there is no revenue.
That's right.
Steve, let me, sometimes, I don't know, Jeff, if you ever heard of a company having to file for bankruptcy before coming back on the market. And that could be the same thing here. You might see, or you might think that it is going in the opposite direction because you're looking at the result at the end.
No,
but wait, right, let me finish. Sometimes I have to break down a building completely before I can present the new building. And therefore, some of the things that will be, right, so that the storefront with the glass, so that people could see the products, it's not being seen right now. But I must break this building down first before I could bring the new building. And that is why I'm saying that the important things that some people may want now as the results of football, no financier is going to come in to football until they know the structure is credible.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point.
Exactly.
That's my point. We have no structures in place yet.
Exactly.
We are almost a year in, right? And no committees are functioning. The board is not functioning. I want to break it down. We need to break it down so that we can begin to build. You understand what I'm saying? And I have no issues with that. I'm not even thinking about results on the field, because I haven't mentioned that. Because before we get to the field, we need to have things in place that will make sure that when we get to the field, we can operate as we have never had the opportunity to operate since I have been in football.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that is the key thing that we have been discussing for the past couple of weeks. Structures. Mm-hmm. We need to get those structures in place, Steve, in order for things to start to roll the way it should be.
Anybody have any parting words? We have 1 minute left.
No, that's it.
Nothing? Everybody get so.
I really hope those structures and get all the committees
and the right people in the right
positions. Yeah. Right.
So we need to have somebody start doing what they need to do and get things right. That's what we come up with here today. Because
and football needs to be patient. The people and supporters of football need to be patient.
And footballers, supporters, be patient, as Clarky would say. And I don't know how much more patient I can be, you know, because there's nothing happening. And they push out the other group, and there's nothing happening. But anyhow, that's another show in itself. Viewers, thank you for tuning in. I know you're confused as we are. Guys, thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, viewers, we come on a Monday night at 8, and we repeat on a Tuesday at 1, also on a Saturday at 1. ACTN, thanks for the opportunity. We love you for that. We have a Facebook page. You can check us out, and we have an email address, fielddreamtt@gmail.com, where you can drop us a line. This show has ended. Go in peace. My name is Steve David.